Here's part two of trying to conceive via timed intercourse and IUI. Break for the summer, but then research options at the same time. So I decided to try to focus on dealing and managing with my PCOS. I found a clinic, Florida Institute for Reproductive Medicine. The closest office to me is in Daytona, and then the rest are Jacksonville, St. Augustine, and then South Georgia for the rest. And I saw that they had a center for PCOS. And when I called and spoke with their receptionist, she felt that let's address trying to conceive, and then from there, PCOS. I said, okay, great. I had my consultation in June, and from there, we decided to move forward with an IUI with a reproductive endocrinologist. We did that IUI in August. It had been some months, so we actually ended up changing it. All my other IUIs and timed intercourse cycles, I had always done letrozole days 5 through 9 and always had an ultrasound, typically day 3 of my cycle and then day 12. With this one, my body was just not wanting to cooperate. I was slow to respond. I had to take more letrozole. I had to do additional ultrasounds. It was adding up. We were driving to Jacksonville, which is about 2 hours away, driving to Daytona, which is about 45 minutes away, and unfortunately it didn't work. And I was devastated. That honestly put me into a depression. I couldn't believe the sacrifices that we had made. I think we had spent on that final IUI alone about $1,200, and that came from medications, that came from missing work because I hadn't, I was accruing PTO. It wasn't already just banked, travel, the gas that it took to get there. The IUI itself, it was much more money going to the specialist versus going through my OBGYN. And that was our 6th cycle and our 4th IUI, and I could not believe that it didn't work. It was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. And at that point, I felt like it was like a death. Like it was like I had to grieve not being able to get pregnant in that way. It was such a loss. It was like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another chapter, which would have been IVF. And a lot of people ask, how much, did it cost? I would say about each cycle was about $500 to about $1,000 for every IUI cycle. It just depends on how many ultrasounds I had to do. And this was all basically self-pay. So they would bill it through insurance to see if they would pay something. Sometimes I was lucky and they paid for the ultrasound, but most of the time they didn't. And then what else can we talk about? Oh, IUIs, do they hurt? They hurt like hell. Some women, it doesn't hurt. My first 3 IUIs with my OBGYN hurt like hell. I ended up on my 2nd IUI having uterine contractions immediately after the catheter and the sperm went in. It was the most painful experience other than my IVF retrieval that I had ever had. And I remember my husband freaking out, and even my doctor freaking out, my OBGYN freaking out, and my husband asking, is this how she's gonna be during labor? And she straight up said, yes, she's actually having contractions. And it was extremely painful. And those 3 IUIs with that office, it hurt. But when I did my 4th IUI with my reproductive endocrinologist, with my second opinion, it didn't hurt at all. I was having a full conversation with my doctor. And he said again, this is what he said. He said either they didn't know what they were doing at my former office, or the catheters that they were using were like some sort of like generic size. It wasn't specially made for an IUI. It wasn't as flexible as it needed to be. So that's that in a nutshell. right before I did our last IUI, which was again August 2017, I did have a consult with an IVF doctor with CNY Fertility in Syracuse, New York. I kind of wanted to prepare myself because I felt like this was the beginning of the end. I wasn't confident in the IUI. I felt like I was getting desperate. I needed to speak with someone. And I did my consult over the phone. You can do it phone, you can fly up there in person, you could do it Skype, which is amazing. I did that in July and discussed with the doctor. And he basically let me know IVF was his number one choice for me, or I needed to do an IUI with more aggressive drugs like injectables. And he let me know that with the cost of injectables, it could very well end up being the cost of doing an IUI with them because of the fact that we needed to be more aggressive with my treatment because I wasn't responding anymore. I wasn't responding as well as I did previously. Most doctors do recommend 3 to 4 IUIs, and then after that, your chances of conceiving plummet. Some even recommend 6. I think 3, again, my personal opinion, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a licensed medical professional, but just from my personal experience, I feel like 3 cycles of anything, maybe other than IVF, because that's another thing, but 3 cycles is more than enough. And he ended up being right. That last IUI didn't work. My follicles were struggling to grow. I had to go take more medication, do more ultrasounds, do more driving, do more expensive, and it ultimately wasn't successful. So that was a pretty hard pill to swallow too. Once I got my period that last IUI, I basically went back and thought about what he said, and IVF was basically where it was at. And that basically concludes my timed intercourse and IUI journey. I do have so much more to tell. My next episode will be about my IVF, my fresh cycle, and the retrieval process and what it took to get to that point. And that'll be the next video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And I will see you guys soon.